wherever you may be. And once again, welcome to everybody. And this is being recorded. So in a few days' time, you can find it on our Family NGO website for your use. Share it with friends and so on. So we have an exciting, I hope an exciting meeting for you today on empowering women and the family through family business. However, before we get started, just a quick personal note. I apologize for my appearance with this Band-Aid under my nose. I had a basal cell carcinoma removed from my upper lip last week, and fortunately now I am on the mend. However, you have to look at this for a while, so unfortunately I must look like Groucho Marx with a pink mustache or Super Mario with a pink mustache. So please bear with me. So once again, thanks to all of you for joining us. And before I present our two speakers, I just want to say a few notes, say a few words. And as many of you know, I'm more numerate than literate, so I put a few statistics together just to give a little bit of background. And as usual, we will have question and answers at the end after our speakers have finished their presentations. So please make use of the chat box. And in case I don't, if I foul up using it, Ryan Coe, who generally runs our technology here, will step in and help me out. So anyway, to begin, as I wrote in my concept note, which I assume you all read, if the United Nations is serious about achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, it had better start paying attention to the family and family-founded businesses. The family is not only the, quote, fundamental group unit of society, but also the main economic force for global development. A few statistics are in order. In the United States, according to an article in Fortune magazine, 87% of American businesses are family-owned or controlled. They account for 54% of GDP and provide 59% of employment. Now, US GDP is $27 trillion. So American family-owned firms provide economic growth each year equivalent to half of that $27 trillion. I mean, that's nothing to it's a statistic that ought to be given more attention. I was unable to find a source to see globally what a similar comparison would be, but maybe our speakers have this. However, the professional services firm Ernst & Young, that some of you may be familiar with, every 2 years they compile a list of the top 500 family-owned or controlled businesses in the world. The latest compilation refers to 2023, and in that year, the 500 largest family-owned or controlled businesses in the world generated just over $8 trillion in revenues and employed over 24 million people in 47 countries. This report is prepared every 2 years, as I said, in conjunction with the University of St. Gallen in Switzerland. The revenues generated, if it were to be attributed to a country, would be the equivalent of the third largest country in the world after the US and China. If that doesn't bring home the importance of family business to the UN, I don't know what would. In addition, 76% of the companies have been in business over 50 years, and 1/3 are a century old or more. So family companies do provide quite a bit of endurance. In the compilation, most of the companies were located in Europe. However, there were 118 companies in this study from the United States, 78 from Germany, 31 France, 20 Italy, 16 in Canada and Switzerland, 15 in mainland China, and only one in Russia, just to name a few. The top three largest companies in the world in 2023 were, number one, Walmart, which employs 2.3 million people globally. Berkshire Hathaway is number two. That's Warren Buffett's shop. And the third, interestingly enough, is Cargill, the agricultural behemoth that was founded way back in the late 1800s. Among these 500 companies, women occupy 23% of board seats. Though up from the previous study, there's still room for growth here. And also the top 500 companies, of course, changes every time that they do the study every 2 years. In the last compilation, there were 7 new entrants into that group of 500. When it comes to entrepreneurs, of course, everybody knows who Bill Gates is. And of course, he was the co-founder of Microsoft. In just a few years, his company grew, prospered, and was poised for a major expansion. Bill Gates's mother, a successful businesswoman herself, was instrumental in getting Bill's company its first major contract with IBM. Founded in 1975 in the family garage, Microsoft today employs 221,000 people worldwide, and its stock has hit a market capitalization in excess of $3 trillion. When it comes to women, many businesses are started by women. For example, in New York City, one of the most competitive business environments in the world, there's a TV program entitled Her Big Idea. It is all about women starting a business in New York City, either alone with a sibling or as a couple with her husband. The types of companies founded range from a couple who invented some of the first computer games to Melissa's Cupcakes that have expanded nationwide. Another TV program popular in the United States that focuses on entrepreneurial capacity is Shark Tank. On this program, entrepreneurs, often couples, with a new product or an improvement on an existing product, seek capital and assistance in marketing for their fledgling but thriving businesses. The range of products and the imagination and creativity of these family businesses is truly impressive. The sharks, who are successful businessmen and women, who have invested their money in some of these new family businesses, have turned many of them through their expertise and capital. They have turned many of them into multi-million-dollar companies over the 15 years in which the program has been in existence. Worth noting is one of the comments I heard recently from one of the sharks, Lori Greiner. She prefers to invest in family businesses that are run by a married couple, quote, because they support one another in operating their business, unquote. As an example of a successful family business, I would like to bring to your attention Greg and Susan Gianforte. Greg Gianforte is today the governor of Montana. But before that, in 1997, Greg and his wife, Susan, founded a technology company called Right Now Technologies. It grew into Bozeman's largest commercial employer, creating over 500 high-paying jobs. Bozeman is a small town in the southern state of Montana. Eventually, the company founded by the couple was acquired by Oracle for $1.5 billion. Oh, and I forgot to add, Greg and Susan also raised 4 children. Back to the SDGs. SDG 1 seeks to eradicate poverty. SDG 5 pursues gender equality. SDG 8 promotes decent work and economic growth. SDG 17 fosters partnerships to achieve all of the goals. The importance of family business cannot be underestimated. They play a key role in the local, regional, national, and global economies. What better, more effective partnership than a family starting a business and watching it prosper? As the saying goes, from small acorns, big oaks grow. So how does a family business get started? For that, we have two wonderful professors to speak to us today. And first, I'd like to introduce Professor Anthony Canizzaro and also Professor Francisco Lara. Both are with the Bush School of Business at Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. The business school features the Family Business Consortium and also something called the Family Business Initiative. Both professors have done extensive research and publishing and have plenty of experience observing and analyzing all aspects of families who are in business. Professor Canizzaro is the director of the Family Business Initiative and also is Associate Dean of Faculty and Academic Affairs at the Bush School of Business. Professor Lara is visiting professor at Catholic University. He is from the University of Valencia, Spain, and he's actually going to be speaking us from Valencia. He is home today. He also has a family business, so has firsthand experience with the topic we're dealing with. I hope he will tell us a little bit about that. They have prepared an interactive presentation for us. So without further ado, let me start by introducing Professor Canizzaro, who will initiate the presentation. So Tony, please take it away. And thank you both for being here.
Thank you so much, Vincenzina. So I guess let me start, share my screen. And let me know if you can see our presentation. Excellent.
Perfectly.
Thank you so much for that just outstanding introduction. So outstanding, in fact, the charge you gave us when you had invited us here was to convince this group and maybe the UN as a whole of the critical importance of family business. I think you've already done that, but we'll try to add what we can to fill in some of the details. You already, I think, gave a good introduction to myself. I wear a lot of hats here at the Bush School of Business. I'm I'm a director of the Family Business Consortium, which is a group of family businesses that meet here at the business school, both for education and mentoring. We help family businesses, unlike a lot of centers for family business around the United States, which are really focused on large multi-generational family businesses. We made an attempt at our founding to serve all family businesses. So we don't have exclusion requirements that say you have to be in the third generation. If you're an entrepreneur that's building a business that you intend to pass on to your family, we want to introduce you to that third generation family business owner so that you can learn from the mistakes that they made and help grow your business. So that's sort of what the consortium does. I'm also the Associate Dean for Faculty and Academic Affairs, so I run our academic programs here at the school, and I teach Strategic Management International Business. Dr. Lara, do you want to do anything you'd add to your introduction to yourself?
Just a brief introduction to myself. Thank you very much, Vinny, for the introduction, and Tony. I'm now here in Spain, and I will talk later after Tony about the global survey that is done through the STEP Global project, in which I'm directly involved, both as an academic, but also as a family business owner. And I finish my presentation later with some examples of women entrepreneurs and how we can connect the dots between women's entrepreneurs, family business, and the importance for the United Nations.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Lara. Oops, it's not letting me advance the slides. Let me see. There we go. I wanted to start off briefly, if you'll indulge me, just with an introduction to who we are, because we're as far as family business centers go, we're relatively new, starting up just 3 years ago, where obviously a Catholic university, we had considered launching a family business program for a long time, and it never seemed right. And as us Catholic universities often do, we take cues from the Pope. Pope Francis declared the year of St. Joseph a couple of years ago, who was the patron saint of both work and the family. It was also the 40th anniversary of two encyclicals. I don't know if your colleagues know, encyclicals is a technical term for papal writings on the social teachings of the church. Two of St. John Paul II's most influential encyclicals, Laborem Exercens, which is the encyclical on work, and Familiaris Consortio, which is the encyclical on the family. So it seemed to us the right time to sort of formally enter this area in family business. And this project that we started has really just exploded since then. And I think part of the reason is because we take a unique approach to family business, which I'll talk about a little bit. We're part of what the university calls the Sioka Center for Principled Entrepreneurship. And we consider it the entrepreneurship center of the Catholic university in the United States, right? So we're a pontifical university. We're charged by the Vatican, technically charged by Pope Leo about 130 years ago. And we take that role very seriously. The way we distinguish ourselves is we have what we call a person-centered or a human dignity-centered approach to everything that we do. Just as a point of note, Sioka is named after a gentleman named Art Sioka, who himself was a family entrepreneur. He started what's called the Wine Group, which was the single largest seller of wine in the world, I think for 5 years running now. One of their brands is a family brand, probably the one you're most recognize. It's called Franzia. So he was the sort of inventor or the mind behind boxed wine, if anyone has tried Franzia wine before. And he was a good friend of the co-founder of our center, Andreas Widmer, who I can talk about maybe a little bit later. I think what we do differently is that we approach business not as some instrumental activity, right? We see business as a pathway to holiness. We don't have a zero-sum view of the world. We see engaging in business, and family businesses in particular, engaging in business as co-creating with God. And so what does this mean for family businesses to sort of engage in principled entrepreneurship? Director Widmer, in his sort of vision for what we do, has 5 pillars for what it means for a family business or any business person to engage in principled entrepreneurship. First and foremost, it's humane, which means there's a German social philosopher and economist, Wilhelm Röpke. He was the founder of sort of the German economic miracle after World War II. And he wrote back then that the vital things in life go beyond supply and demand. Instead, it's the ultimate end is the human person, right? Not profit. And so we think that people don't exist to be parts of markets. Markets exist for people, and that individuals in communities that build them. So markets, another way of thinking about this is markets are not an end to themselves, right? They're a process that promotes human flourishing. The second pillar of principled entrepreneurship is the idea that it is creative. So one of the hardest concepts that I have, that I try to teach my students, is the idea of what we call the subjective dimension of work. So this means that a family business is not just making something or changing stuff around to make a product, but that through the act of work, you're changing yourself as well, right? You're becoming a better version of yourself. We call this co-creation with God. We also think that you have to acknowledge the social element of business. So the famous management sort of guru, Peter Drucker, wrote that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And we think this is especially true in family businesses. Family businesses have ingrained values in highly developed cultures. And this leads to extraordinary levels of, for example, trust within family businesses relative to their non-family peers, which is a critical element for business success. There's also a large literature in institutional economics and economic sociology on the extent of family business, just more generally as an organizational form, and why it's so natural for families to form businesses, because they are the sort of hotbed of culture and trust creation that is necessary for business activity. We also say it has to be positive sum. Family businesses, unlike the stereotypes, and I'll get into some data in this, tend to be the best places to work compared to their non-family business peers. They tend to treat their employees best, whether it be through employee engagement or compensation. They have lower levels of turnover. They are more longer-term oriented and less short-term profit oriented. And they tend to be about shared value creation. And then lastly, maybe most importantly, we think that principled entrepreneurship is about a mindset. So my colleague I was talking about, Andreas Widmer, who's the director and co-founder of the center, he was also a former Swiss Guard. I don't know if anyone remembers when the Reagans visited the Vatican maybe 40 years ago, and Nancy Reagan tripped down the stairs to the Vatican when she was walking out. There's a picture of this 7-foot-tall man catching her as she fell. That's Professor Widmer. He was the Swiss Guard that saved Nancy Reagan from falling down. That's an aside. But he likes to sum up this whole concept of principled entrepreneurship with the question, how may I help you, right? So this idea that family business at the end is really about helping other people, in serving other people, or shared value creation is very important to us. So I told you a lot about who we are. Let me tell you what we aren't. We're not a large state school that puts together enormous data sets on family business. We do research in family business. So Vincenzina alluded to what we call our initiatives versus the consortium. The consortium is one of the initiatives that we have in family business. We also have a family business program for students, and we sponsor research into family business. But we're much more micro-focused on our research. For example, I have a colleague who's doing research on what he would call a human flourishing study, examining how family business leaders are more likely to be driven by transcendental motivations than instrumental motivations, right? So pursuing business, qua business, for something greater than the self, which tends to be a unique trait amongst family entrepreneurs. So we don't do the big data collection. That said, we have a lot of friends that do the big data collection, and they've kindly shared that data with us so that we can share it with you today. The challenge I said at the beginning that Vinny gave me in the talk was to get you thinking that family business is a force for good, that the UN should really take seriously if we're serious about sustainable development. The term you use is sustainable development. The term we use internally here is enterprise solutions to poverty. We think they're one and the same. Bottom-up solutions, right? So we'll get into that data. I know that Vinny shared a lot of data from the EY study. So I went out to not be repetitive. I went to a partner organization, a friend of ours, that does an annual survey of US family businesses. I'm going to give you a sort of snapshot of family business in the United States. I'll then pass it off onto Dr. Lara, who will give you the global perspective, and then talk to the important role that women play in family business. And hopefully we'll have some time to conclude with some final thoughts on the contribution to sustainable development. Our data today is provided, oh, sorry, I did want to do some quick numbers before I get into the US data. I think I disagree. I had some slightly different numbers than Vinny on the percentage of, say, US employment. I think it just depends on the year it was measured and who's doing the measuring. But the data that we have suggests that family businesses, there's about 32.5 million family businesses here in the US. They create about 83 million jobs, which is approximately 60%, or 2 in every 3 jobs in the United States is a job in family business. Globally is about the same, about 60%. And as I mentioned earlier, we have ample statistics suggesting that family businesses have lower employee turnover. For those of you that don't study business, this is extremely important. Turnover is one of the largest expenses that a business has, and you'd much rather have employees that work for you for 20 years than 3, because then you have to upskill an entire new employee, inculcate the culture, et cetera. And so the fact that family businesses are run like families is really a competitive advantage. Data also suggests that family businesses make up more than 2/3 of US GDP and over 70% of global GDP, with an annual contribution here in the US of about $7.7 trillion. Just to go a little bit more into the global statistics, in Europe, about 100 million jobs in the private sector are family business. In MENA, about 80% of all businesses are family businesses. And in Asia, it's even higher. About 85% of all the companies in Asia have some sort of family ownership or control. Of the top 750 global family businesses, if you were to rank them by sales, over 20% of those are Asian businesses with a combined revenue of over $2 trillion. More than half of Asia's businesses or largest companies are family businesses. Almost all of them are conglomerates. They're, depending on where you are, if you're in South Korea, there's the chaebol. If you're in, there's the Keiretsu family business groups in Japan. They make up just an extraordinary portion of economic activity in those countries, whether they are private or publicly listed. I think I'll maybe breeze through this in the interest of time, since Vinny already talked about the EY St. Gallen data, just to say family businesses are everywhere in the world, right? And they are not concentrated in just a few countries. The United States, we have some of the largest family businesses in the world, but that's because we have the largest market economy in the world. But if you were to look at it by numbers, family businesses are really the dominant corporate form in most parts of the world. In fact, we see this as sort of the raison d'etre for why we started a program. If you are looking at family business literature, academic literature, research into family business, a lot of what comes out of, especially the Western Academy, sees family business almost as a suboptimal corporate form, right? I have one colleague who's an economist who said family businesses are tantamount to theft. And our view is exactly the opposite, right? Family businesses, because the family is, in our teaching, is the fundamental unit of society. In this place where it's the first place that you learn to cooperate with others, and that you learn values and you learn culture. It's a natural place for economic activity, which is mutual cooperation towards a shared goal to start, right? And because of that, and I'll talk about this maybe more at the end, just in the interest of time, you see even in places that have very poor market supporting institutions, maybe ill-functioning court systems or bad corporate law, you see flourishing family businesses because the family provides that sort of institutional trust that you need to engage in business, that you don't have forming sort of organically in the market, right? So let's talk about family business in the United States. I'm very thankful to our friend of our program and colleague, John Gulieda, who's at the Family Enterprise USA, which is an advocacy group it's a nonpartisan, or rather bipartisan, so it has representatives of all parties in the group, advocacy group that is mostly made up of other family business organizations like us around the United States. And it serves sort of as a knowledge sharing hub, right? So it talks to family businesses, it talks to people like Dr. Lara and I, and academics at other institutions, then it uses that information to try to inform policymaking. Aside from us, members of this, or supporting organizations, I guess, of FEUSA are Wake Forest University, University of Toledo, University of St. Thomas, University of San Diego, Wilkes University, University of Pittsburgh, DePaul University, Loyola University. That is only maybe a tenth of the people that I have on my list, but just to give you an idea of the scope and the good work that they do. And they were kind enough to share this data with us so we could share it with you. It actually was just released yesterday, so you're some of the first people that's seeing this data. They go out into the marketplace and survey American family businesses, both to learn about the family business environment, the policy sort of challenges that family businesses see, and the opportunities that family businesses detect in the market so they can then inform policymakers. Let me give you a little bit of their insights. So their data is, oops, did I skip us? Oh, I might have accidentally deleted a slide where it got out of order. Let me give you some just descriptive statistics on their data. So they had 789 family businesses from 40 states. In that data, they found that the person reporting the data was almost always the CEO or the president, so in about 70% of cases, or one of the C-suite executives, so either the board chairman or one of the vice presidents or CFO, chief operating officer. Almost all of these organizations, over 3/4, were, not what you would think of as a mom and pop shop, right? They were designed as an S Corp or a limited liability company, some sort of pass-through entity, which is, in many ways, governance equivalent to what you would see in a non-family business. The principal industries that they found for family businesses operating in the United States, they tend to be over-concentrated in areas which are maybe not as focused upon in private markets like the companies listed on the stock exchanges, right? So we have a lot of family businesses in manufacturing and operations, 22%, and construction, real estate, and then also retail and agriculture. So a lot of those sort of foundational or core industries tend to be areas of concentration for family business. Of family businesses in the United States, they found that 59%, so almost 2 in 3, are second, third, or fourth generation family businesses. There are a large number of what you would call first generation family businesses. But family businesses, contrary to what's often discussed in the sort of academic literature, do have a tendency to survive. There's a phenomenon that we study in the family business literature that we call the third generation problem. So they note that a lot of family businesses don't make it past the third generation. And it's seen as a flaw in family business. And our view is that is actually a ridiculous interpretation of the data for 2 reasons. One is that family businesses often discontinue as a going concern because they actually diversify. So they form something called a family office, and they use sort of family assets as a more general, they're almost like a manager of a wealth fund. Dr. Lara actually has some specific research into this. And the question should be, should that be considered a business failure? For most family businesses, that's considered a success, right? The other big flaw in this interpretation is you have to realize how long a generation is. A generation is a very long time. So most of these family businesses are existing for more than 20 years. So 8 in 10 family businesses exist for 20 years or more. In the United States today, according to data from McKinsey, non-family businesses, most non-family businesses exist for less than 18 years. And so family businesses by far outperform non-family businesses when it comes to longevity, right? And so the idea that family business is somehow detrimental to the longevity of business activity, I think, is just false. Some other data that I think is really interesting, if you look at employment in family business in the United States, again, these are not mom and pop shops. About half of family businesses are 1 to 50 employees. But the other half is more than 50 employees, with a good deal of family businesses employing 100 to 500 employees or more. Over half of family businesses added jobs in the last year, while only 11% reduced jobs in 2023. So family businesses are large. They're an important part of the economy, and they're very successful. They're also, again, going to this idea that this is not a mom and pop shop. Most of the family businesses that FEUSA interviewed are operating across state lines, 3/4. Many of those in many states, more than 6 or more states, right? And about 1 in 5 is operating internationally. So family businesses are big business. They are also successful businesses, right? So of the businesses in the US that were surveyed, about 40% of them had $1 million to $5 million in revenue. But we had another 40% between 20 and 500 million, and 4% of those were in the $500 million to $1 billion range. 61% of those businesses reported revenue growth, so they did very well in the last year, with only about a quarter of them reporting revenue decline. 38% of them had double-digit growth, and 40% of them had growth of 20% or more. So this is well above the average that we've seen for listed companies. And so again, relative to their non-family business peers, family businesses do very well. They also, to sort of borrow lingo that we use in Catholic business education, they distribute wealth justly. So if you ask whether or not family businesses are paying as well as non-family competition, 46%, so about half, pay above industry average, and 40% pay at industry average, right? So almost 90% of them are at or above industry average relative to their non-family business peers. If you ask them sort of a backdoor question on what priorities you have for what you're using your profits for, the question they use is, if you paid less in taxes, what would you do with it? Over half of them say they would invest it back in the business, right? 30% of them say they would pay more to their employees. Only 8% of them say that they would make distributions to their owners, right? So they're really interested in the business for the sake of the business and in the people that are working for the business. And now I'm going to pass it on to Dr. Laura, who can talk a little bit more about what's happening in family business globally. And just let me know when you want me to change the slide. Okay, Paco?
Sure. Thank you, Tony. Thank you very much. If you want to pass to the next slide. So this study is sponsored by KPMG Private Enterprise, but it's part of a more global project that is called the STEP Project Global Consortium. This is like a global consortium or family business worldwide. In order to make the mind to the magnitude of this survey, we are talking about more than 2,400 family business leaders that every year participate in this survey. For example, now is open the 2024 survey for the following year, and it's going to take place in the next month of May in Amalfi in Italy, the conference where we are going to present the data. If you want to move to the results of the following slide, we can see the questions, the type of question that this survey is trying to analyze and compare. I use the US as the variable, comparative variable, to compare with the global results. So in terms of the size of the business, basically the US family business are similar to the global size of business. And here we differentiate between small, medium, and big corporations. By small, they consider below 50 employees. Medium size, that is the 30%, will be between 50 to 250, and more than 250 employees will be big corporations. So globally speaking, the majority of the family business are still in the medium, small side, but it's a big percentage. And you can compare with Europe, the America, Asia, and Middle East, and you see there's basically similar data. If you want to pass to the next slide. Another question is how many businesses family business operate at the same time? As you can imagine, the majority of the family business operate in one mono business, in one sector, but there is an open space. There is an interesting percentage, like 35% in the US, that operate in multiple businesses, in multiple sectors. So if you compare that with the global results, you can realize that it's also similar all over the world. There's not big differences. So if we move into the next slide, we can now compare, and I think this is a very interesting slide to compare the sectors, the industries worldwide. Probably these data are from the last year, there's some difference, but basically similar of the data that just Professor Canazzaro presented a few minutes ago. But what is interesting is to compare with the other regions in the world. And especially, I would like to highlight the Middle East Africa family businesses in the sector, for example, construction, or that I integrate here. What we saw before, real estate and construction will be integrated here, where Middle East is the number one. And the service or retail sector is the America, where the family business is a big percentage of the cake, where you find companies working on that service sector. And finally, the manufacturing is the Asia Pacific family business owners who focus the big percentage of family business owners focus on manufacturing. We can move to the next slide. A very important question. Well, this was also mentioned before, so I'm not gonna go with a lot of detail here because it's how many generations are currently active in the business. You can see here the majority of the family business owners are run by a single generation, but there is a 40% in the US where there's multiple generations running the business at the same time. So it's not only one generation involved, but several generations currently active in the business. When we compare that with the rest of the world, you can see that it's almost the same. So it's not big difference as well. We can move to the next slide. We can pass this one, this slide. So this is a very interesting slide for me and result from the slide. That is the percentage of the company shares that are owned by the family. And this is a very important question because when we see the data, 87% of family business in the US shares are owned by the family. But that also means that there is almost 13% of shares distributed among the workers or another private investors or another minority equity partners. And this is something very interesting. And when you compare with other regions in the world, Asia Pacific is the one with the lowest percentage. So that means that they are more open to distribute also equity among non-family members or private investors. And that I think is open the door for also thinking about that in the future, a family business owner. We can move to the next slide. Thanks, Tony. And this is one of the most important slides connecting the dots with the topic that we are talking today, that is women entrepreneurship. So the data in the US, I think is very interesting when we compare also with other regions in the world. 76% of the CEOs or C-suite personnel are men, but 24% are women. When we compare with the rest of the world, I think we are much better than other regions, except the case of the Americas, no, the Hispanic or Latin America, South America, no. But if you move to the east, the Middle East Africa or Asia Pacific, the percentage is much bigger, no, the ratio of men and women there. So then we can continue now with the main questions. That is it. If we can follow to the next slide, Tony, if you want. So we also analyze, you can pass to the next slide as well, to the preferred leadership styles in family business owners. So we basically analyze 3 different leadership styles. And as you can see in the slide, the USA family business, Europe and the Americas, the main dominant leadership style is the transformational leadership style, compared with Asia Pacific and Middle East Africa family business owners leadership style, while the predominant leadership style is the authoritarian leadership style. we can move to the next.
Could you say quickly just a little bit about what each of these mean?
Yeah. So authoritarian leadership style is a more hierarchical approach to the leadership or management of family businesses. So more traditional in the sense of hierarchical, authoritarian, where the role of the leader is what we call in the academia is a high power distance between the leaders and the workers. A more transformational leadership style is a more low power distance between leaders and the people working in the family business. So it's a more, they take care into account people development. So the leaders are taking into account the transformation of people in the company. So they are investing not just on the return on investment, but also on the personal development. So it's more humane, if we want to say that, And charismatic leadership style is the type of leadership where the leader charisma is a personality of the profile of the leader is what really runs the family business. And sometimes we can think about family run by leaders with a charisma because it's the founder, it's the first generation founder. So we sometimes tend to associate that with a very not focus on, it's more a little bit egoistic or a little bit selfish, no? That will be the difference basically among them. So a very interesting question is the entrepreneurial capability of family businesses. In this, with this question, basically, is try to analyze how is the family business correlated with entrepreneurial profile. And basically, we try to analyze three possible answers. So a focus on innovation or innovativeness, the propensity to invest in the research and development of new products or services. A second alternative will be proactiveness, that is the ability to seize new opportunities or anticipate the future, competitive market analysis. And the third approach is the risk-taking approach, that is a company propensity to make a large risk on the market. No? So based on this question, we now can move to the next slide to see the results in different regions in the world. So basically here we see how in the Asia Pacific family business entrepreneurial orientation is focused on innovation and innovativeness and creation of new products. The priority, of course, there is always answers in other slides, but the US, Europe, and the America is focused basically on proactiveness. So the entrepreneurial orientation is the innovation, is the proactiveness to create new initiatives, to launch new business ideas. More than focus, of course, there is innovation in the family business owner, but based on the data, on the results, the prioritization is on the proactiveness approach. And finally, the Middle East Africa family business owners priority is on risk-taking. They make a higher risk-take on their entrepreneurial orientation. Can move to the next slide. The family and control. Well, this is another factor for the sustain a continuous entrepreneurial orientation in the family is called the socio-emotional wealth. So the emotional value that family derive from owning and managing the business. And basically, we analyze 4 different variables that we can show in the next slide. So basically, the family business owners from US, the America, and Europe prioritize the family control compared with family identification, and only the Middle East Africa family business owners and Asia Pacific, they focus on emotional attachment. This is something also very similar from the cultural dimensions of difference that the literature talk about, more people orientation or emotional orientation versus more product orientation or result orientation. Sometimes families in this Europe and Western societies tend to focus more on control of the ownership. We can move to the next slide. And finally, the results introduce the measure of success. What means success for a family business? And there are different alternatives or possibilities. One idea is the non-financial indicators like the loyalty or support internal social indicators like innovativeness or hiring practices, external social indicators like environmental impact and financial results. So based on the study, if we can move to the next slide, we can see that the European family business owners tend to focus the attention on the financial results to measure success. Is the main indicator compared with the other variables. In the case of Middle East Africa family business owners, they focus on non-financial indicators, so basically loyalty and harmony. And finally, the internal social factors are the key factors for most of the North America, the US, also the Latin America, and also the Asia Pacific family business owners. So in order to support these entrepreneurial capabilities, I think is a key factor is the governance. Something that was mentioned before by Tony is the governance, the importance of good governance for family business owners. And the following slide show some results of how many family business have a formal board of directors. And in the US, well, even better than the rest of the world, the 61% of family business has a formal board of directors. Only 39% don't have a formal board of directors. When you compare that globally speaking, I think is something only Asia Pacific has a bigger percentage here. But the key question is the family council, something that probably not many people know exactly what that means. A family council is a meeting of the family members and in the business or not directly involved in the business that participate formally in a family meeting once or twice a year to where those who are now managing the firm share the information with the rest of the family, direct or indirectly family, to share the data for transparency and accountability. And here is where there is a space for improvement, because only in the US is 40% of the family business who have a family council, but the majority of the family business don't have that family council approach. When we compare that with the global data, there are all bigger percentage of family business owners who has a formal family council. No, so that could be an area to improve if we want to involve into the family business not only those who are now actually running the business, but also family second or third generation who are not now running the business, but they can become in the future part of it. So we can move now to the now we can. I would like to share some examples, some experience from my. I'm a professor, but also a family business. We have a family business, third generation family business in Spain, and now we decided to move from the traditional family business from agriculture, that was where we are from, into a family office to diversify our portfolio. And one of the things we do is to help people, especially not all of them, but some of them, women entrepreneurs, helping through direct investment or through advice to develop their own business ideas, to develop more entrepreneurial women, because we realize that most of the entrepreneurial case studies that we analyze are men oriented. So I think we need to promote that more. And so let me give you some examples about that. I'm going to show you 3 examples. The first one, and I think it's also in the meeting today with us, is the Women Palante. No, Women Palante is an example that we have in the US, in Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia. It's a global community of Latina entrepreneurs that they create a incubator specifically focused on women. For an example of that is mompreneurs, what they call. That is a training experience for moms who want to launch their business ideas. I'm really honored to be a mentor in them. And here is the picture of Yurani Sandoval, who is the CEO and founder of this business incubator that we have in the area of DC, Maryland, and Virginia. Another example, you can move to the next one, is Pepina Pastel. This is something that also, I put this example, even though it's from Spain, because I'm helping one of these mom entrepreneurs in the US. It's called Nana's Cakes. It's an example of an incubation from Women Palante that is doing exactly the same thing that I want to present here with Pepita Pastel. Pepita Pastel is a project, a story between a mother and his daughter with a special gift on baking. And they create one of the most trending brands of cakes in Spain through social media, thanks to Instagram and, of course, CEO and for example, Vogue Spain, the newspaper, consider Pepita Pastel as one of the most famous cakes on Instagram made in Valencia. No? This is another example of success, in this case from Spain. And the last example I want to share with you is Singularu. In this case, we are our family business. We are an investor on these entrepreneurs. We were a business angel. We invest at the beginning to create this brand. This is called a luxury and affordable luxury brand that they are trying they create and produce jewels to sell online, and they start to sell these jewels online, and now they move to retail stores with more than 500,000 customers. And this is a couple. This is Cristina Aristoy, who is and Paco Tormo, the co-founders. They are a couple. They are married. They are trying to promote the entrepreneurial orientation with clearly a family values, and also with sustainable values. For example, they use more than 180 local and national suppliers to provide the materials, trying to reduce the carbon footprint, also using a recycled material. 73% of their material is recycled silver. And also in the packaging, they are trying to use a non-plastic material to deliver the product. So that also brings some examples of values that and the importance of family business and women entrepreneurs in family businesses. And with that, I want to finish Tony our presentation.
All right. Thank you so much, Paco. I see that I was told we were supposed to be at around 50 minutes to allow time for questions, and we're just about there. So I just want to wrap up, maybe sort of building on this discussion of Singularu and just tying everything together to speak about the role family business plays in sustainable development. And I'll direct everyone to the document that this committee has put together on family capital and the SDGs, which I think really is the best articulation of this, more than anything that I can add. First and foremost, I think the way that you capture the potential for family business contribution to sustainable development is through understanding what we call, and in what this document that you've put together calls, family capital. I really like, I just think it's such an excellent definition that Marcia Barlow, who's on the call, writes in this document of family capital as, quote, mothers, fathers, and their children engaging in the business of life, supported by an extended intergenerational family network, all working together to create a virtuous web that serves the economic, emotional, physical, and spiritual well-being of all family members, and ultimately serving communities and nations. I really love this because we use the same language internally in our family business program, and which we arrived at independently. But we came to the same place, and I think it's because of this anthropology that we share that we came to the same place. I know you write in your document about sort of the family being the fundamental cell of society, which is what we believe as well, going back from the writings of Pope John the 23rd in the early 1960s and all the way back through St. Thomas Aquinas, this idea that the family is this fundamental cell of society. The way that we envision family capital, and again, something that we arrived at independently, but I think the person who cites it, that I think talks about it the best, is scholar named David Immig at Michigan State, and he describes family capital as the result of a system of principles that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And the parts that we identify when we talk about family capital are four, right? And we kind of think of them as points on a compass. They're financial, human, social, and spiritual, with spiritual sort of being the north side of the compass. And I'm like Vincenzina, an economist by training. And so the way I like to talk about this is that these are complements, not substitutes, right? So each one of these things contributes independently to the success of a family business. And the fact that family businesses are uniquely able to bring all four of these to bear, I think in ways that make that non-family businesses often struggle with, especially if you're in places that don't have strong market supporting institutions, really give family business an edge when it comes to contributing to the economic flourishing, but also the social flourishing of countries. And so because of this, it makes family businesses natural partners for development, right? We have this idea from Catholic teaching that families are sort of the first classroom that you ever step into, right, as a child, where you learn knowledge and skills, but probably more importantly, you learn values and you learn the idea of character and character development, what we call sort of growing virtue, right? And you learn trust. And this becomes then a starting point for launching a business. A colleague of mine, he's actually the other co-founder of our Sioka Center for Principal Entrepreneurship, is, I think, the leading academic in the area of what they call local versus systemic entrepreneurship. So whether or not entrepreneurship is sort of tied to its very local roots in a small place, or is able to grow and contribute to the development of an entire economy. And family businesses, by virtue of growing social capital and connections beyond the family, and being able to leverage high degrees of trust, et cetera, really are necessary in a lot of, especially developing country contexts, of helping entrepreneurs, grow beyond just the local and expand to more systemic or economy-wide or economy contributing forms of entrepreneurship. And then lastly, in your document, I think talks about this maybe more eloquently than I can. I have a very good friend in Ghana who does a lot of work in this area. And remittances from family businesses in one part of the world to the next. He tells me he works here with some of the NGOs in town. They don't like to use the terms north-south anymore, and I appreciate that, but this is the source that I pulled it from, used it, so I'm, don't attribute necessarily to me, but this idea that from developing country capital flows, remittances are probably the single largest one of these non-governmental versions of these flows, and a great significance of these come from family businesses, right? And so they just play this key role in sort of underpinning the way that development is working around the world already, and we need to recognize that role. And I'll end with, they are just a necessary part of a flourishing society. They're not a secondary corporate form. They have an enormous amount of economic clout, not just in other parts of the world, but here in the United States as well. They are really a tremendous source of tax revenue, both at the sort of, the government, the federal government level in countries, but also investment in local communities. We teach entire classes on this. We could get into the Mittelsbund in Germany, the sort of small to medium-sized enterprises that are really the backbone of the German economy. A lot of those are family businesses. Majority maybe are family businesses. And so having flourishing family businesses are really just key to a flourishing economic sector. They also, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, family businesses, because of this internalized trust, they can flourish even when other, what we would call market supporting institutions like functioning court systems or contract law, et cetera, are weak or underdeveloped, right? Family businesses step in. The term we use in the academic literature is they fill the institutional void with the family. And then lastly, I think it's worth noting that family businesses are often leaders in civil society. We experienced this here in the United States when the United States industrialized, and this is true around the world. Oftentimes, the most generous people are the family business leaders who are seeking to sort of to give back or to give out at least and improve the lives of everyone that they work with. So on that note, I've gone a little bit over my time, but I will say thank you, and I guess I'll stop the share and open it up for any questions that you may have. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, Tony, and also Paco. This is an excellent presentation. You're very much to the point. You're practical. The reasons for sustaining family enterprise, it's all there. And Tony, I'm glad you first of all mentioned our book and Marcia's chapter, the introduction to our book. I happen to have it right here for those of you who have never seen it before, but Family Capital and the SDGs is also available online for free, so anybody can have a look. I was also grateful that you mentioned the importance of remittances that are sent by people who emigrate legally to other countries. This is very important. The World Bank compiles the statistics on these worker remittances or immigrant remittances, and they publish it twice a year. There's a report that they put out on this. And the last figure I saw was an estimate for this year of about $800 billion. So to me, that represents the poor taking themselves out of poverty. And very often, I mean, you know, living in New York City, where we have such a large percentage of foreign born people living here, a lot of them start a business. For the most part, I think it's restaurants. And it shows the entrepreneurial spirit of these migrants as well. So, and of course, they do start with you know, one person or a couple. You know, it's a family enterprise, the so-called mom and pop shops or the bodegas that we find in Spanish Harlem and so forth. Since I'm co-chairing the meeting, we normally have the privilege of asking the first question. So I think the question I had in mind, Paco sort of alluded it to, and that is women in business, when they start a business and it's growing, they're doing well. At that point, they need capital. And there was an article just a few days ago in the Financial Times that I cut out. And let me quote here what someone said, is women don't struggle to start a business, they struggle to grow. And the reason they have struggled to grow is because they have trouble getting capital. Now, from what you said, Paco, you have a business that helps businesses. And you mentioned, you know, helping women. But what should women do when they need capital? I mean, is it that they don't present themselves and their business in a meaningful way where they can attract either private capital or bank loans or angel investors, as they are called?
Yeah. Thank you, Vinny, for the question. I think it's a fantastic question because I think it's a key factor. I think men, I think we are very good or a little bit more aggressive asking for money. Sometimes women are more diplomatic or more sensitive, asking for money for their startups. But I would like to raise because also I bring the questions in what the question was about that, the second question. And I think that's why incubators like Women Palante is a fantastic place where you can meet women entrepreneurs with investors, because they pass through a period of training and formation, and then finally they finish their business plan and they do their elevator pitch to a group of investors, and they try to analyze the data and find if there is a good investment to give the money at the beginning. We are doing that from the beginning, from 5-6 years ago, And also at the university, in the FIOCA Center for Entrepreneurship, we incubate sometimes students, sometimes, most of the time students, men and women, of course, in that case. But I think we need to do something particularly focused on women entrepreneurship. And that's why I mentioned here the example of Women Palantir, because we have their experience and example. And I think they are probably in the meeting. I don't know if they are, they make some question or not, but I think basically go to incubators, but sometimes you can focus on women entrepreneurs or just other type of, for example, angel investors or ángeles investors in Spain. There are many incubators in the US, of course, much more than here in Spain. And that's why I'm very interested to promote the women entrepreneurs, because I think in the long term, the success is probably much better because they are more persistent on the continuing and resistant of the business ideas. But sometimes what they need is some advice in the financial indicators or the KPIs in order to prepare the business plan. That's why I mentioned the example of Pepina Pastel and Nana's Cakes. Nana's Cakes is an example in DC and Maryland area. It's a mom who is from home doing their cakes, and the other example is Pepina Pastel, that is now pretty well known in Spain because they make a huge promotion online. But that will be just to also sometimes need some training or formation before launching their ideas. Or because I speak too much.
Can I add just something, maybe a slightly different take on that? We tend to focus a lot on the idea that women entrepreneurs need to be more assertive, etc. I'm not going to discount that, but I think part of the problem too is not with women entrepreneurs, but on the providers of capital, and almost taking just sort of a blinders approach to recognizing valuable investment opportunities. A friend of ours who runs, a friend of our SIOCA Center who runs an organization here in the DMV called the Conscious Venture Lab. His name is Jeff Cherry. It's a 12-week accelerator program for early stage ventures. He was describing to me what they do, and I think that it's one of the best sort of models for diverse investing that I've heard of. They target women entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs from marginalized communities, entrepreneurs that are former convicts. And essentially the investment, and he's doing this from a marketplace standpoint, not just he's trying to create the end is creating investments for, diverse groups of people. For him, he sees this as a blind spot in traditional investing in private equity is his opportunity, because women entrepreneurs, their ideas aren't any worse than male entrepreneurs, for example. And so you have a lot of good, high net present value prospective projects to invest in that are essentially going uninvested in. And so he targets them specifically because they are very good, and there are opportunities there to be had that other people, for their biases or whatever reason, are excluding. And to the extent we can build, I think, investment ecosystems that recognize that and go out and encourage people to create what Pope Francis would call sort of an inclusive capitalism, right? It makes both social but also economic sense. And so if we can emphasize that economic sense, I think we'll get more people on board.
Mm-hmm. Very good. We talk a lot about women struggling, to get ahead and so on, and develop the business and go from one stage to another. But it's also well to remember that, some women in business have been very, very successful. And two names come to mind. One is Mary Barra, who's the chairman of none other than General Motors. I mean, it can't get more prestigious than that. I mean, she's an engineer by training, and she was very much influenced by her father, who was also a trained engineer. And I don't know whether, he took his daughter to work when he was with the company or not, but she ended up following in his footsteps and going much farther than he did. And another woman who made it to the top, who retired recently, is Ginny Rometty, who was, of course, chairman of IBM. She also was a trained engineer, and she wrote her biography not too long ago. I bought it a couple of months ago, and I have it here. It's called Good Power. And Ginny, as I said, retired recently, but the book is really very good. It shows she was a caring person all throughout her career, as she ascended from just starting in business and making it all the way up to the top position. She really cared for the people she had to supervise, and I think it's worth reading if you can. I don't know if there's a paperback copy or what, but it's worth reading. And also, I might add, there was a very interesting theme that runs through the book, in that she's married, and her husband was very supportive. I mean, he was a lawyer, he had his own business, but he was very supportive of her at every stage of her career. And I found that very, very interesting, very enlightening. Now, we have just a few minutes, and I think our chat box is full. No, we have, let me see what's there. I sometimes have trouble with this. So someone has some concerns about third generation problem. Is there research, data, best practices that can help family business avoid it? Either one of you can tackle it.
Yes. So the short answer, yes. There are, again, there's varying schools of thought. I'm in the school of thought that the third generation problem is, to a large extent, somewhat overblown. Some people attribute the third generation problem to this sort of substandard business model sort of mindset, where you're intentionally putting people into positions of authority in the business, and maybe that's not the best person to run the business, and so the business underperforms, or that person is not as invested in the business. Oftentimes, we have a lot of research that suggests that sort of you go one generation out, and like son saw what pop was doing and started to build it, etc. And we have the traditional shift that you have in any entrepreneurial venture between the founder and sort of the first generation non-founder. And then when you pass on to the third generation, there tends to be a cultural problem, right? Where this person might not be inculcated with the same values as the first person was, et cetera. Again, going to the literature on sort of comparing family businesses to non-family businesses, the equivalent, right, of a non-family business just transitioning from founder to next generation leadership to next generation leadership, family businesses tend to outperform. To the extent that there are problems that family businesses face, which are social, which is absolutely true. We didn't get in a lot to the mechanics of family businesses, but there is a tremendous amount of research on the fact that working with your family members does entail certain complexities, let's say, that are not in non-family businesses, like dealing with the fact that your CFO might also be your sister, and that you might have disagreements with your CFO, and you don't want that to become a disagreement with your sister, because those dynamics are, not always productive. The way that you get around sort of what we call problems of generational transition, I think mostly comes down to governance and formalizing governance. That's sort of pillar A, and then pillar B is having a really strong culture and making sure that everyone that's an active member of the family business is sort of shares this vision for the family business and shares the values of the family business. One of the members of our consortium has gone so far in his business to form what he or his family calls a family constitution. And the Constitution formally articulates those values. And it formally sets up a governance structure so that if you want to be a family member engaged in the family business, you have to show that you are, just like you'd be in any other business, that you are a good fit for the values of the business. They make you go and get some training or work experience outside of the family business before you come into the family business, so that you aren't just passing a baton on to the next person, but you really are showing that whomever the family member is taking a role in the family business is qualified to be in that business, right? And just sort of a last comment on this note, so that we have, I know we have to we have a hard stop at 2. There are some cultures around the world that solve this problem by creating channels for more non-family managers to come into family businesses. So for example, there's some work that's been done in Japan where you have some of the longest sort of existing family businesses in the world that shows when they sort of bring outside managers in, you see these improvements in performance because you're able to bring in people that have, knowledge and expertise that you might not have within the family, but they don't want to lose the family component. So it's maybe less common now, but maybe 50, 60 years ago, it was not uncommon for when you would bring some new person in, you might actually adopt that person into the family, either informally or formally. So you bring them both in as management and you bring them as family. So there are ways around it. And a lot of it, just like in any business, starts with just thinking intentionally about the fact that these issues will arise and trying to address them.
Okay. Yeah, there's a question that pretty much I think you answered about how do you once the business grows and you've run out of family members to employ and you have to look for outsiders to join the firm, how hard is that transition? How do you go about doing it? I think you pretty much answered that, but if you want to add anything else, Tony, to that, please do.
Maybe Paco, if you could maybe talk about your own experience, that might be valuable.
Yeah, I basically the company just came to the patient analyzation of less bit and what I
Paco, we're having trouble hearing you. Just speak a little bit. Yeah, please speak up a little bit more.
Sure. No, Michael, hope you can. I was saying is that it's between
Paco, I think your earbuds are not working anymore. Sorry.
No, I don't know.
It's a technological change there.
The technological problem. Okay, so maybe we should we'll move on to the next question and we'll try to answer that offline.
I see Lynn Walsh. Can you unmute yourself, Lynn?
Yeah,
I don't know if you can.
Can you hear me now?
And yes.
But
Speak up.
I think it's my phone. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
My background is marriage and family education, marriage therapy. I just am struck by the values that are incorporated with a family business functioning. Today, you see people focusing on themselves, selfishness. They go into marriage. They don't realize it's a teamwork. There's a higher purpose. And I think it's so clear that family business just brings that to life. We used to work on farms and we were cooperative and we dealt with our difference. It wasn't all about me, but it's about making the whole purpose work. So I think it's a beautiful model. I wish there was more family businesses. Just a comment.
Me too.
Yeah, very good. That's a good note to end on. I want to thank everybody who has stayed with us throughout this presentation, and a very special thank you to both Tony and Paco for agreeing to be with us today and help us celebrate in a very positive way the contributions that family and women make, not only to their own empowerment, but just to the benefit of mankind, really, or people kind, or womankind, all of those. So once again, my sincere gratitude to both of you. And I think we're going to have you back for some other aspect of this because, gosh, you guys were great. Thank you so much. And hope to see you all next month when we have another presentation. And I think we're dealing with population matters. And we hope to have another interesting meeting for everybody to attend. So do come back and bring a friend if you wish. So all the best, and I wish everybody a pleasant rest of the day. Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you.